James is also an active blogger. His site is theasianslant.com, who writes about Asian American identity, culture, and experiences. UNAVSA, please help me give a warm welcome to James Hung.
Hey everyone, so thank you Jack for the introduction. Again, my name is James and I'm the Executive Director of VFA located here in Seattle. And I don't know about many of you, that stretching was really hard for me. I actually just got done playing in a soccer tournament this weekend and I had 5 games in 2 days. And my body feels so broken and tattered and bruised right now, so like touching my toes was really hard. So, what was that? No, we made it to the final and lost 2-1. Thank you. So I know I've got about 30 minutes today, and I wanted to kind of mix it up and try something different. I thought I'd break it up into 3 parts that I'll be focusing on in my talk today. The first part will be looking at Vietnamese culture and identity. And then following that, we'll have some short discussions in your family. The second part is looking at the differences between volunteering and youth engagement. And again, we'll have a short discussion after that. And then my final part is around leadership, and youth leadership in particular. And again, same as the other 2, we'll have a short discussion after that. And the reason I'm doing that is I know everyone's tired, my body's aching, so I don't want to talk for 30 minutes straight and bore everyone. So we're going to try to mix it up. And I'll start by telling you a little bit more about myself and kind of when I was in school. I actually really hated being Vietnamese when I was growing up. All the way through high school, it was really embarrassing for me to be a child of refugee families. I remember growing up in Kent, which is about 10 miles away from where we are now. It's a very suburban place, not very diverse, and there were maybe 4 other Vietnamese families and maybe 3 other Vietnamese students in my school, and I would always avoid them. You know, they would like gravitate toward me because they would see that I was Vietnamese and that I looked like them. So they would always try to talk to me. I was always like, oh, get away from me, I'm American. I listen to Pearl Jam and I compost, so don't talk to me. And that's what I did for a large portion of my life, which is why it's very surprising to many people now to know that I work for the largest Vietnamese-led nonprofit here in Washington State. So when I tell people I work for VFA or that I work for a Vietnamese organization, for many of them who don't really understand our culture or the community, you know, the first reaction that I get is, oh, so you work with those Vietnamese people. That must be really exciting. I love your banh mi, and your bud, and your ao yai fashion shows. Like, the women are so elegant, so beautiful. And I get that a lot, you know, so I tell them I'm Vietnamese, and they've already made these assumptions in their head about what that actually looks like for our community. As if they can understand it all through eating a banh mi. You know, it's like, if you go to Jamba Juice, and you know, you get like the orange smoothie, and they're like, do you want a brain booster with that? Do you want an immunity booster? That's how they are treating like our food and our culture and our sandwiches. It's like, well, if you have the tip noon, that will tell you about the strength of the Vietnamese community. And if you want to know our compassion, you know, Vietnamese compassion, try the tofu sandwich. And really, if you want the wisdom of the Vietnamese culture and history, you have to try the duck beer. That's the special. So try that. So it's like we have our culture for sale, and for $3.99 you can understand Vietnamese culture. You know, which to me has just become a real thing. Thanks. Thank you. So to me it's just been really kind of absurd and ironic. Because the more we try to promote our culture through food and through fashion shows and through these symbols, the more distance we actually create from the people we're trying to connect with. And it's ironic because, you know, culture is actually created through the process of social interaction, not show and tell. You know, I feel like we've been doing a lot of that, just a lot of show and tell and not a lot of social interaction. So that's the first question I have for all of you and your families is, what parts of your culture do you identify with the most? And what can we do in the VSAs and in UNAVSA to actually show and articulate our culture in a way that honors and dignifies the history and heritage of our parents and people who have come before us. So why don't we spend 5 minutes really talking about that? What are the aspects of the culture that you really identify with, and what do you want to share? So I will let the family leaders take over and help facilitate that conversation. So we'll spend 5 minutes doing that.
Alright, guess we'll have him later. Alright.
How do you
Wait, what was the question? You're terrible. I'm busy. What? Don't worry about it. What aspect of the biggest culture do you identify with? Ready, set, go. Go, team.
I don't think you can.
Wait, can you repeat the question?
And it was, what aspects of the culture do you identify with?
Oh, yeah, as the gentleman said, like, there's like food.
It all matters.
What?
Can you say,
What? As the gentleman said, there's like food and all that, and it's very difficult. It's not just Vietnamese, like being Asian in general. Like I definitely resonate with the story. Like I was embarrassed to be Vietnamese, like being in white culture and like school and all that. So it's really tough. But yeah, just jot some down, like what you think or what your experience was.
I woke up and like, I want love. Every time after I want love. Every time after I
She's like, this is the hot seat. We just never stood up.
Green Lake is pretty nice.
Right? Yeah.
I was thinking it was on Green Lake. Yeah. I just, our culture, our people are really resilient.
Anyone would like to share? Alright, that's fine. If not, I'll go on to the next part of what I'd like to talk about in the morning. And the next part is around volunteering and youth engagement. So I remember last year, I was invited to a panel discussion hosted by the Seattle University Vietnamese Student Association. And on the panel, there were 8 major Vietnamese service organizations here in Seattle. So all 8 of us gathered in one room around a table. And it was kind of like a scene from Godfather. Has anyone seen Godfather? So yeah, it was crazy. Everyone's just sitting, and it's like, the Nuins and the fans are dividing the turf in Seattle, and everyone's talking about why the Lays are always being disrespected, and everyone's like, hey, where are the trans? Why aren't they here? So it was a very tense discussion. It was very bloody, a lot of name calling. I'm pretty sure someone got poked in the eye. So just like Godfather. Okay, no, I'm actually making that. It was a very good conversation, and it was great just to be in that space with everyone. The topic of that panel at the time was around how do you get young people to be more involved in the community, right? So how can each of the students in the VSAs volunteer with each of the 8 major organizations? And some of them threw out ideas like, well, you can volunteer for our benefit dinner and come clean up afterward, or help serve food. Or you can put on an ao dai and walk down the runway in a fashion show. Or if you can speak Vietnamese, maybe you can help us translate. So that was kind of like all the answers that were given by how youth can get involved in their community. And it left me a bit disappointed. I was a bit frustrated because you have 8 major organizations here in Washington, and that was the best we can come up with. Like, come clean up after dinner. Like, that's something you pay someone to do. And it really got me thinking about the differences between volunteering and engagement. And kind of got me all worked up and really frustrated. You know, volunteering is really great, but I've learned that volunteering is really about helping other organizations achieve their mission. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to diminish the role of volunteers. Even at my organization, we have volunteers serve as tutors, program instructors for refugee and immigrant students. So volunteering is great, and I encourage all of you to do it, but that does not contribute to authentic or effective youth engagement. And I believe when we start to confuse the two ideas, we get ourselves into trouble. Because engagement is really about empowering young people to achieve their visions and their goals and their missions. But we haven't really had that conversation as a community. And part of that is on established leaders and organizations and community members to create that space for young people to actually get involved. For me, personally, kind of being a new executive director, it's my first time ever. I'm 6 months into the job. I'm fairly young myself, and it's been a really, really big learning curve. It is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But I've appreciated that someone actually gave me that opportunity to step into that leadership role. And I feel like that's where we have done a disservice to young people. We keep telling them to get involved, but we're not giving them the opportunities or the space to actually use your skills or use your experiences or your wisdom. And that's really unfortunate. So the second question I have for everyone is, what can we do? By we, I mean current leaders, current organizations, elders. What can we do to actually support ESAs and to support UNAVSA achieve your vision and your mission? Because it cannot be just about benefit dinners. It has to be something more than just volunteering. How do we engage young people and the VSAs to realize your goals and your priorities? And that's something I'm sincerely curious about. So let's spend 5 minutes and really talk about that. Like, what do you need from us? What do you need from the adults to actually be successful? So again, I'll turn it over to your family leaders. We'll spend 5 minutes to really think about that. What can we do to support your work and your priorities? Any reactions, surprises, thoughts that anybody wants to share from your mini group discussions? Yeah.
I don't know, in our group discussion, like one of our team members kind of brought up the fact that there was kind of like a generational gap sometimes when, like, you know, I guess the goals did not align. So there was like, it caused a bunch of conflict. So I guess there needs to be some more, I guess, concepts of compromise, because another member said that there's like a similar situation where, like, you know, the older generation, they basically were like very unrelenting on like their view of like how a certain event, I guess, should be run. So I guess there needs to be more compromise, I guess, from like the groups.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And actually, I really appreciate that you shared that, because it's kind of a good segue into the final part of my kind of morning tonight around leadership. You know, you mentioned this generational gap, where I actually don't think there is a generational gap. I think it's just a perception. You know, and I'll go into detail about that. So last month, I was at a community gathering here in Seattle that there was a book reading for the Gang of Four. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Seattle history, the Gang of Four refers to a group of civil rights activists here in Seattle, representing 4 different communities. So you had Bernie Whitebear from the Native American community, you had Larry Gossett from the African American community, Uncle Bob Santos from the Asian American community, and Roberto Maestas from the Latino community. So in the 60s, these 4 diverse leaders came together and made a lot of social change here in Seattle. So that's part of Seattle's history here. So last month at the event that I was at, I was a guest, just, you know, an attendee, and they were talking about kind of a book that that told their life story, how they did what they did. And it was very inspiring. But at the end of their talk, there was one gentleman, an older gentleman, that stood up in the room, and he was really energized and really motivated. And he's like, the fight's not over. We gotta keep getting active. We gotta keep mobilizing. And where are the young people? Why aren't the young people getting involved? Like, why aren't they here right now? And then I'm sitting there, like, looking around the room and thinking, half the people in this room are under 35. Like, you want young people, we're here. Like, I don't know what you're looking at, sir. And I get that a lot, right? How many of you have ever been to a space where people are constantly asking, why aren't young people involved? Like, where are the young people? Why aren't they motivated? It's like sitting in the back of a classroom, and the teacher asks a question, and you have the answer, and you're just sitting there, you're like, oh, call me. I know this, call me. I really want to answer. That's what it felt like to be in that space, of being constantly called out and asked why young people aren't engaged, and thinking, dude, I'm right here. It's like me asking everyone at UNAVSA, where's all the Vietnamese people? Why aren't they here? So that was like the irony and the absurdity of it. And to me, it represented like a spark in my head where there really isn't a generational gap. There's no leadership gap in our community. Right? We have all the leaders we need. What I see is a perception gap of people, elders, or established organizations not recognizing and valuing the leadership and the skills and the experiences that we already possess. And it's really frustrating to me because when we talk about leadership, we always talk about it in the abstract. The leaders of tomorrow, right? Future leaders. Let's invest in the young people. We should start them off at age 3 and they'll be a leader in 20 years. It's like investing in Social Security. Like, I pay into it, I don't know if it's going to exist in 20 years, I have no idea. But that's how we treat leadership. Like, it's this abstract thing. Like, leaders don't exist right now. I mean, we've just shown here at UNAVSA that you have 400 leaders in the room. It's not tomorrow or next week, it's happening right now. So it's a perception gap. We're not recognizing the leadership that our communities already possess, the skills and the assets and the strengths that we bring to the table. We're not creating that space. And it's very unfortunate. So the final question I have is, what can the VSAs and UNAVSA do as leaders of social change? What are the issues that VSAs and UNAVSA are really passionate about and can be a leader on? Is it, climate change? Do you want to save the polar bears? Is it social justice? Is it race? Is it marriage equality? Which issues are VSAs going to take up in our community, are going to guide the way for us, for the rest of everyone else? So, that's the last question I have for everyone. So again, I'll leave it up to the family leaders to help facilitate, but really the question is, which issues can VSAs lead on in this process of social change? Thoughts, surprises that people want to share before we wrap it up? We've just got a couple minutes. Yeah, we can give you the mic.
How's it going? My name's John Wan. So the one we talked about was economic health disparities. With respect to Asian Americans, right? I think too many times Asian Americans, when you look at it, it's aggregated into one group. So if we're looking at that from an economic standpoint, we're very well off. Well, I think what a lot of people fail to see is the fact that there's a huge disparity between East Asians and Southeast Asians with respect to your median family income level. And that was one thing. And that was what our group kind of talked about, to really get that data, break it down, and see where the real issues are, so then we can start tackling it, right? If we're going to say Asian Americans, yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a problem, right? High median household income, good education level, but when you really break it down, is really when we see the disparities. And that was an issue that we were talking about tackling. Thank you.
So, thank you for sharing. So I'm going to wrap it up now, and just to reiterate, like the three things that I think we really need to have a careful, critical, and thoughtful conversation about. That really is, the identity and the culture. What do we mean when we talk about it, and how do we share it and articulate it with others? So that was the first part. The second part was really understanding the differences between volunteering and engagement. There is a difference. And bringing that back to the work that you do of really how do you support engagement within VSAs and UNAVSA, which, to me has been just phenomenal from everything I've seen. And then the final part is, what is leadership? And who are leaders? And furthermore, who defines what a leader is? Because, as I said before, I really think it's a perception gap that our community has all the leadership we need to solve a lot of the big problems like health disparities, or like the education gap, or, polar bears in the ice caps. So, again, I wish there were more time to go deeper into many of these conversations, but I hope it just kind of sparked everyone's curiosity and thought, and I'll be here for the rest of the morning if anyone wants to chat some more. But other than that, I think everything you're all doing is pretty amazing, and I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to be here and talk today, and hopefully we'll have some time to get to know more of you. So thank you.